Welcome one more day to Space en Armonía. I'm going to reflect on something which is extremely important. It's a state of consciousness that gives us access to the kingdom within, the true divine kingdom, full of abundance, of love, beauty, intelligence, resources of all kind. And this state of consciousness was known in ancient times with many names. In ancient Greece, wise men call it common sense, koiné aesthesis, because it's the sense that gathers all the other senses. It's the consciousness that is somehow behind everything we perceive. Because one thing is to perceive an object, and a very different thing is to perceive consciousness itself, awareness itself. So, this is not a question of looking for something that we can touch, but rather something that we can feel. It's an act of consciousness that gathers subject and object. And we have to realize we are not looking for an absolute subject either, because the state of consciousness that gathers everything is wholeness. It's both subject and object at the same time. And this is very important because there are many philosophies and spiritualities that look for an absolute subject and even an absolute object of reality. Scientists try to look for the bricks of this world, but all the bricks eventually collapse into the absolute consciousness, which is not just a subject, but an action of union that brings together subject and object. That's basically the meaning of existence. Existence comes from Latin ex sistere. Ex is from, sistere is to stay from in an absolute way. So existence is that which is from that which never changes, absolute being. And being is precisely the state in which we feel absolute love, beauty, wholeness, health. Therefore, in order to access any form of healing, of security, even to change our circumstances, we have to access the state of consciousness in which we are perceiving this light in us. And this is the beginning of what we could call divine consciousness and divine conscience in ourselves. It's not the same. Consciousness is a state in which we are perceiving with an awareness, but we are not fully aware yet of something which is deeper. Conscience is when we realize the divine being is living through us, loving through us, even suffering through us. And in this way, we realize that we don't exist apart from the universal being that lives through us. As Paul said, it's not me who lives, but the Messiah who lives in me. The Messiah is true divine conscience, the true perception of the Holy Being through us. Because there is only one being, one life, one conscience. This is the truth we have to perceive and understand in ourselves. This is why it's so important to cultivate the primary state of divine consciousness, step by step, And there have been teachings that speak about all this in different ways. For instance, in India, they differentiate between different states of consciousness. One of them is sleeping without dreams. Then we have sleeping with dreams. Then the usual wakeful state, which is not really an authentic wakefulness. It's also known as vigilia. But usually, when people think they are awake, they are just dreaming. They have associations, mechanical thoughts, mechanical emotions, and that's part of the cosmic dream. And then there is the so-called fourth state, turiya in Sanskrit. And this turiya, in my view, is connected to Torah. Torah means the way of love, conscience, master issue. Yeshua said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Now, turiya is the witnessing consciousness that is behind everything we perceive. It's connected to the mind of Arankatmun, but it can be very easily misunderstood or misperceived. Even we can believe we are in turiya when we are just perceiving with our psychological mind. We have to distinguish between different states. We are not speaking about psychological states, because we can be aware of all our psychological states. And that which is aware of our psychology, our personalities, cannot be psychological, cannot be a brain function either. True consciousness does not come from the brain. This is a fallacy, because consciousness can perceive the brain. So it's a meta cognition. It goes beyond the brain cognition. And when we speak about the fourth state, we are speaking about the door to the kingdom. This is why the Master said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Now, you have to enter the kingdom of heaven. To enter consciously, opening your eyes, because it's all over. To give you an example, the other day I was having a walk to liberate my mind. I'm going through a very tough situation, taking care of my dad with the help of my sister. And I went for a walk. And at some point I realized that I had forgotten the presence of the divine in me for hours. And at that moment I realized that divine conscience was all over, perceiving through me, living through everything around me. And it was a very beautiful experience. I perceived love, beauty, serenity, tranquility, safety. And I realized back again the importance of cultivating the state of self-remembering, as Mr. Gurdjieff put it. Many years ago, when I was 17 years old, I was shocked by one of his sayings. He said, your main problem is that you don't remember yourself, because you forget constantly about your different modes of perception, and you act mechanically. So it's very important to perceive ourselves fully. Just make the exercise of becoming aware of your thoughts, your emotions, your body posture, your surroundings, and it doesn't matter what it is. Don't judge it, don't reject it, just accept it as it is. When you realize there is a complete perception, then you will be accessing a different mode of consciousness in which you can attract better circumstances and even shift your psychological state. If you are worried, you can be sure about yourself without preoccupations, because you allow a loving consciousness that brings you the most intuitive thoughts, the thoughts that are going to help you, really. And as I said, this is the foundation, this is the beginning of divine conscience in ourselves. We begin with consciousness, obviously, but we have to be able to perceive the divine eye living through us. That's known as Dat Elyon in Hebrew. There are other teachings which call it differently, but I use it Hebrew because it's connected to the way issue taught. I'm not saying Hebrew wisdom is the only one that expresses the truth, obviously. Now there is a very interesting scheme known as the Sephirotic tree, which many represent with 10 spheres, even though we can realize it has 13 aspects. And as you know, it has a crown known as Keter, which is really the crown of life, because when we have conscience and will activated in ourselves, we can walk like kings, accessing true abundance. But we have to differentiate between pure conscience and pure will, and pure conscience and will manifested in the world. That is Malkut, the kingdom. So Keter and Malkut are the same, but from 2 points of view. This is why I express it with 0-1 and 1-0. This intuition came to me several years ago, and I think it's very clarifying. And this is even a way of transcending mathematics, because I'm not speaking about numbers or calculations. 0-1 and 1-0 are just symbols. 0 is the openness, the expansion of consciousness and conscience. 1 is the goal, the direction, safety. And 0-1 is somehow the openness to develop the seed. There is one seed that unfolds like a tree. And that's the unfoldment that reaches Malkut. Malkut is the full development of all the seed. Malkut is the development of the seed content. This is why I express it as 1-0. It doesn't mean there are 10 Sephirot. It means the oneness has been contained fully in the openness with all the richness, all the development. And this is why we can perceive the divine kingdom even in this world of darkness. So when we are becoming aware of our true being, we realize that we are bringing consciousness, divine consciousness, into this world of shadows. And this is the beginning of healing, of making everything whole again. And obviously this is something to ponder deeply. I don't want to make the video any longer. We have enough for today. So let's keep opening the space of consciousness so we can perceive the truth and manifest the true qualities of limitless love and modified life, integral conscience, and deep, blissful serenity.